Step out of the vehicle. Hands where I can see them. Officer Grayson barked, one hand on his holster. The Georgia sun was sharp, baking the cracked pavement of the gas station lot. Lieutenant General Marcus Ellison looked up slowly, the silver stars on his lapel glinting as he unbuckled his seatbelt. His uniform was crisp, his presence commanding. But none of that seemed to matter to the young white cop standing outside his black Escalade, red and blue lights spinning behind him. Marcus opened the door calmly and stepped out. He stood tall, towering over the officer by a good 6 inches. His hands were up, fingers spread wide. "Is there a problem, officer?" His voice was calm, controlled, trained. Grayson sneered. "Problem is you were driving like a maniac through a school zone." His eyes flicked to the Escalade, then back to Marcus. "This your car?" "Yes." "Rental?" "No." Marcus didn't blink. Grayson took a slow, suspicious walk around the vehicle. Another officer, slim, young, and pale, hung back by the cruiser, hand resting near his taser. "You got ID?" Grayson asked, stepping closer. Marcus handed over his military ID with 2 fingers. Grayson didn't even glance at it. Instead, he muttered, "Figures. You people always think you're above the law." Then louder, "I'm gonna need you to kneel, right now." A small crowd had gathered. A woman with her phone out. A man whispering to his son. No one intervened. No one moved. Marcus's jaw clenched, but he did not kneel. He adjusted his posture slightly, just a tilt of the chin. "Officer, I'm advising you to read the name on that ID before you embarrass yourself further." Grayson laughed. "You're not special, tough guy. You're just another thug in uniform." He shoved Marcus in the chest. Gasps rippled from the onlookers. The younger cop took a step forward, unsure. Marcus stayed still, completely still, until his phone buzzed in his pocket. He spoke without looking. "You might want to answer that radio. Right about now." Grayson frowned. His walkie crackled alive. A dispatcher's voice came through, urgent, clipped. "All units be advised. Do not engage with suspect at scene 27. Stand down. FBI en route. Repeat, stand down." Grayson's smirk faded. "What the hell is going on?" he whispered, backing away. Marcus finally took a step forward. He reached slowly into his jacket and pulled out a sleek badge holder. Inside, an FBI clearance card. Special Liaison, Homeland Military Command. "You're about to learn the difference between power and prejudice, Officer Grayson," Marcus said, his voice a calm storm. In the distance, black SUVs were already turning into the lot. Windows tinted, sirens off, quiet and deadly. The crowd didn't know what was happening yet, but they could feel it. Something had shifted. And Officer Grayson, he was already starting to sweat. "Sir, please, back away from the scene until we sort this out," the younger officer said, stepping between Grayson and the black SUVs pulling in. Marcus didn't move. He simply looked at the kid's badge. Officer Tyler Mays, 20-something, nervous hands. "You just heard the dispatcher." "This isn't your scene anymore," Marcus said, low and steady. Behind them, 4 black Suburbans lined up like chess pieces. Doors opened in perfect sync. Out stepped men in suits. No name tags, no small talk, just presence. One of them, a tall black man with mirrored shades and a steel jaw, strode straight toward Marcus with a tight nod. "General Ellison, we've got it from here," the agent said firmly. "No," Marcus replied. "I stay." The agent hesitated, then nodded again. This wasn't a man you overruled, not in public, not when half a gas station was watching. Officer Grayson was still frozen. His hand had dropped from his weapon, but his pride hadn't. He stepped forward. "We got protocols, sir," he said with bitter emphasis. "You're not above 'em. I don't care who you call or what badge you wave around. And I don't care how much fear you've worn like armor," Marcus shot back. "You laid hands on a decorated officer of the United States Armed Forces in full uniform, on American soil. That's not a mistake. That's a choice." Gasps again. The woman filming was still rolling. Her hand was trembling, but her grip never left the phone. The tall agent pulled a sealed folder from his coat and handed it to Mays. This is a federal intervention directive, signed this morning. The general here is part of a Pentagon oversight, operation investigating civil violations in local departments. You just became a case study. Officer Mays swallowed hard. He's undercover? No, Marcus said flatly. I'm always in uniform. You just never cared to look. The weight of the truth hung in the air. Grayson, red-faced, glanced around like a drowning man looking for land. I didn't recognize. You didn't care to recognize, Marcus cut in. You saw my skin, my car, my posture. You made your choice before you even saw my face. The agents moved in tighter. One of them whispered something into a hidden earpiece. Marcus turned to the crowd. His voice softened, but it echoed louder than any siren. For every time we're judged before we speak, for every moment we have to stay calm while being broken in public. This ends now. Agent Carter leaned into Marcus. Sir, we're ready to begin. Should we take both officers in? Marcus looked at Grayson. The cop's hands were twitching. His mouth was slightly open, still trying to explain a mistake that couldn't be undone. No, Marcus said. Not yet. Let them walk. Let them feel the cameras follow. Let them hear what it sounds like when the truth finally screams louder than the lie. Carter nodded. We'll take it from here. Full report goes to Washington by midnight. The media's already calling. Marcus stepped back. The sun was still blazing, but the cold in the air now came from somewhere deeper. The silence of a man who had spent his whole life waiting for this kind of day. The younger officer took a shaky breath and whispered, I didn't know who you were. Marcus turned slowly to face him. Then maybe you should start asking who people are, before assuming what they're not. And with that, General Marcus Ellison walked past the flashing lights, past the shattered pride of two small-town officers, and into the black SUV that had been waiting for him all along. The door shut behind him with a quiet click, and the whole gas station stood still. This is ridiculous. Officer Grayson shouted as the SUV pulled away. You want me to apologize for doing my job? The sun was sliding lower now, throwing long shadows across the parking lot. The flashing lights of the squad car had been turned off, but the tension still glowed in the air like static before a storm. Grayson stood at the edge of the gas station lot, pacing. His uniform was wrinkled, his voice cracked, and his partner, Officer Tyler Mays, stood stiff by the cruiser, eyes fixed on the ground. You saw him, Grayson continued, louder now, catching the attention of people still lingering. He got out of that car like he owned the world. Driving a $90,000 truck, probably tinted windows, no plates, attitude off the charts. Tell me that doesn't look suspicious to you. Mays didn't respond. He couldn't, because he had heard the dispatcher, seen the federal badges, read the sealed document, watched the crowd grow silent as truth slowly crushed every lie they thought they could hide behind. You didn't even read his ID, man, Mays finally said, his voice almost a whisper. Grayson spun around. You defending him now? You know how many fakes are out there? That wasn't fake, Mays replied. He's a lieutenant general. That badge was real. That clearance was real. And we... He paused, swallowing his shame. Weren't. Inside. The gas station. The cashier peeked nervously through the window. The woman with the phone was still filming from her car, now with the window rolled halfway down. Another car had pulled up with tinted windows, but no one got out. Everyone was watching. Grayson's chest rose and fell like he'd just run a mile. I did what I was trained to do, he said. He didn't follow my commands. You told him to kneel, in a parking lot while he was in uniform, Mays said, his voice trembling now. That's not training. That's something else. Grayson turned away again, kicked at a rock near the curb. He wanted this to be over. He wanted the cameras to stop, the whispers to stop. He wanted the voice inside him that had said this guy looks like trouble to shut up forever, but it was too late. Across town, in a quiet brick building near the city courthouse, Agent Carter sat down in a dimly lit room with a laptop and pressed play. A video, taken by that same trembling woman, filled the screen. The moment Grayson shoved Marcus, the words, "You people always think you're above the law," the order to kneel, and then the slow burn of realization spreading across Grayson's face as the federal agents arrived. Carter closed the laptop and looked at the officer from Internal Affairs seated across the table. "How many complaints did you say were filed against Grayson in the last 2 years?" 7. 3 internal, 4 civilian, all buried, all signed off by the same captain. Carter's jaw tightened. Not anymore. That night, Marcus sat in a quiet hotel suite overlooking the city skyline. The lights were soft, the air conditioner hummed low. His jacket hung neatly on the back of the chair. His stars rested on the nightstand beside his phone, now flooded with missed calls from reporters, Army command, and political offices. But Marcus ignored them all. He was staring at a photo, a faded picture of his father in Vietnam, standing, straight, helmet under arm, his eyes steeled by war and dignity. Underneath it, in Marcus's own handwriting, "I will never kneel unless I choose to pray." He breathed out slowly, then picked up his phone and dialed one number. "Director Whitmore, it's Marcus. I'm staying in town. We need to talk about the department's pattern of conduct, and I want a public meeting. Tomorrow." The voice on the other end agreed, quickly, because they had seen the video too. And they knew. This wasn't going away. This time, America was watching. "With all due respect, General, this isn't how we do things here," said Mayor Patricia Hensley, folding her hands tightly across the polished oak table. Marcus sat at the far end of the long conference room inside City Hall. The fluorescent lights above cast a pale glow across her face, but he could still see the nerves hiding behind her professional smile. She was trying to control the room, but her voice had that slight shake, like someone walking a tightrope in heels. Across from her sat Police Chief Daniel Rourke, late 50s, red-faced, broad-shouldered, tie too tight, eyes sharp and defensive. "You called for a public accountability meeting, General Ellison," the mayor continued, "and we agreed. But this department has procedures, chains of command. We don't leap into firings or suspensions based on viral outrage." Marcus didn't respond right away. Instead, he looked around the room, at the 10 faces seated on the city's community oversight board. Half were quiet. 1 or 2 nodded silently toward him. The rest wore the same expression he had seen for years, defensive discomfort dressed up as protocol. "You're afraid of doing the right thing because the wrong thing has become routine," Marcus finally said, voice low, calm, and heavy. Chief Rourke leaned forward. "With respect, sir." "Don't confuse my calm with permission," Marcus interrupted. "I'm not here to be coddled, and I'm not here to negotiate. I was publicly humiliated, shoved, and ordered to kneel in full military uniform. That's not viral outrage, that's systemic rot, and it's time you stop pretending it's normal." Silence. Mayor Hensley adjusted her glasses. "We've launched an internal review. Officer Grayson has been placed on administrative leave." "Pending leave?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Not suspension, not termination, just leave." Rourke crossed his arms. "We don't rush to judgment, sir." "You judged me in 10 seconds in a parking lot," Marcus said, eyes locked on Rourke. "And I wasn't even holding a badge. I was the badge." Gasps came from the back of the room. Local residents had been allowed in. One woman murmured, "That's right," under her breath. Another clutched her son's shoulder, nodding slowly. The room was shifting. Then, from the far left side of the table, a soft voice broke the tension. "General Ellison, I watched the video. I have 2 sons, one in middle school, one in ROTC. I kept thinking, what if it had been them?" said Mrs. Brenda Rowe, an older black woman with tired eyes and a steady voice. "They would have never believed he was a general. They would have believed the officer, just like always." Marcus nodded softly. "That's why I'm here." He opened the folder in front of him and passed it down the table. Inside, printed records of internal complaints, IA reports, and buried findings. It wasn't just about Officer Grayson. It was about a system that had been told not yet for decades. "This isn't just about me," Marcus said. It's about every kid pulled over for fitting the description. Every mother waiting at the station for hours with no answers. Every father teaching his child how not to get killed during a traffic stop. He leaned forward. You have a choice now. Wait for the headlines to fade, or change the headline yourselves. Mayor Hensley glanced at Rourke, then back at Marcus. What are you asking for, General? 3 things, he replied. 1. Officer Grayson is fired, not protected. 2. An external audit of the department's complaint handling. 3. Mandatory bias and de-escalation training and supervised by federal partners. Chief Rourke stood up. You want to gut my department from the inside? No, Marcus replied, standing too. I want to save it before someone else bleeds for your silence. The mayor didn't speak, but she didn't stop him either. Marcus placed one last folder on the table. It was sealed, black and gold. This is from the Department of Defense. It outlines our official partnership with cities willing to reform. Then he turned and walked out of the room without waiting for applause or debate, because the room had already shifted and power had already begun to change hands. Do you know what you've done to my career? Officer Grayson shouted as he pushed through the crowd of reporters outside the precinct gates. Cameras flashed. Microphones reached like claws. Every step he took, someone shouted his name, no longer with respect, but with hunger. Officer Grayson, are you being fired? Do you regret what you said to General Ellison? Is it true this isn't your first complaint? Grayson kept walking, shoulders tight, jaw clenched. His uniform was still pressed, but it looked more like a costume now. Something he wore to hold on to control. A symbol that had been peeled away, layer by layer, since the video went viral. He shoved open the precinct door and stormed inside, only to find the bullpen quieter than usual. Heads turned, conversation stopped. Officer Mays stood by the coffee machine, eyes wide. Grayson, he said softly. Captain wants to see you. Upstairs. Grayson didn't reply. Just climbed the stairs 2 at a time, fists tightening with each step. Inside the office, Captain Lowell sat with his hands folded, the local city attorney standing behind him. Close the door, Lowell said. Grayson slammed it. What the hell is this? He demanded. You know me, Captain. You know I'm not some racist hick who just— Sit down, the city attorney said flatly. Grayson paused, then sat. You were advised this morning to remain off duty, Lowell said. Instead, you gave a radio interview, confronted reporters, and posted a 14-minute Facebook video trying to defend your actions. Because no one else is defending me, Grayson snapped. That man baited me. He wanted that moment. That man is a 3-star general with federal oversight clearance, and you're a patrol officer under state review for use of force, the attorney said. A long silence. Then, Lowell dropped the folder in front of him. You're being terminated, effective immediately. Grayson's breath caught. I served this town for 13 years, and we've got 13 complaints that say you've been abusing that position, Lowell replied. You're throwing me to the wolves. You threw yourself. You just did it on camera this time. Grayson stood slowly, his whole body shaking now, but not with anger, with the realization of something deeper. It was over. Across town, Marcus stood outside the Monroe County Civic Center. A crowd of over 400 people had gathered in folding chairs and lawn seats to hear what he had to say. A makeshift podium had been set up. Local news vans circled. The air smelled like cut grass and truth coming alive. He didn't want this spotlight, but he knew it was necessary. You all saw what happened to me, Marcus said into the mic. But what matters more is what happens next. People nodded. A few clapped. One man lost his job today, but that doesn't fix the system that trained him to believe what he did was normal. He took a breath. That's why reform is not revenge. It's responsibility. From the edge of the stage, Agent Carter watched, arms folded, jaw firm. Behind him, city council members sat looking awkward in their folding chairs. They had never expected this. A man with power who didn't shout, didn't burn, didn't run, he stood. I'm not here to make enemies, Marcus said. I'm here to make sure this never happens to another child, to another father, to another soldier in uniform. The crowd erupted. In the back, a young black boy held up a homemade sign. My dad is A hero, too. And in that moment, Marcus didn't just feel like a soldier. He felt like a bridge. They'll forget this in a week. They always do, Chief Rourke muttered, tugging at his collar as he watched the town hall broadcast from his office. He was alone, the blinds were drawn. The precinct hallway was dead quiet. His phone buzzed constantly on the desk, but he ignored it. News alerts, social media updates, emails from the mayor's office. None of them mattered more than what was playing live on screen. Marcus Ellison, standing under an open sky, delivering words the whole city was leaning in to hear. Calm, measured, devastating. Reform is not revenge, it's responsibility. That line echoed again in Rourke's head like a bullet ricocheting inside a metal box. He turned off the TV, poured 2 fingers of bourbon into a chipped mug, sat back, stared at the framed commendation. On his wall, the one he'd earned 20 years ago for community trust and engagement. It looked dusty now. He whispered to the empty room. They'll forget. They always do. But deep down, he didn't believe it this time. Because, this time, the face wasn't angry. It wasn't loud. It was undeniable. Across the street, in a quiet diner called Millie's, Marcus sat in a booth with Agent Carter and Mayor Hensley. The place had cleared out the moment they walked in. Not out of disrespect, out of silence. Reverence, curiosity. Do you know what's about to happen to this town? The mayor asked, voice low. That's up to you, Marcus replied, stirring his tea. I'm not the one who built the system. I'm just the one who exposed it. Carter nodded. The Department of Justice has already sent a request. They want to begin a formal civil rights investigation, full audit, body cam policies, hiring practices, complaint handling. The mayor looked pale. She set her coffee down with a small clink. That'll be national news. It already is, Carter said, tapping his phone. On screen, a headline, Black General harassed by police sparks nationwide reform demand. This doesn't have to destroy your city, Marcus said gently, but it will define it. Outside the window, 3 teenagers stood near the sidewalk. Trying not to be obvious, one of them held a notebook. Another had his phone camera pointed halfway down. Marcus smiled to himself and nodded toward the door. Let them in. Mayor Hensley looked confused. Why? Marcus stood, straightened his jacket. Because they're the future, and they deserve to see what accountability looks like up close. Meanwhile, in a dim 1-bedroom apartment on the west side of town, Officer Mays sat on the edge of his couch, watching the same town hall replay on his laptop. He couldn't sleep, couldn't stop thinking about that day at the gas station, the way his feet had frozen, the way he'd said nothing when Grayson shoved a decorated general. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaled, then he opened his notepad. At the top, he wrote, "What I should have done." And beneath it, he began listing every moment, every chance. He had to speak up, to stand up, to say no. By morning, the list had over 30 bullet points. He didn't know if it would fix anything, but he knew this. Silence was no longer an option. The next day, the city woke up to posters stapled on streetlights and pinned on bulletin boards across town. They were plain white, black bold text, "Truth isn't trending. It's here to stay. Public forum on department reform, 6 p.m. at Monroe Civic Auditorium open mic. Real voices, no filters." In the bottom corner, hosted by General Marcus Ellison and the Citizens Accountability Alliance. The posters weren't slick, but they didn't need to be, because the truth didn't need marketing anymore. It just needed a mic. "You're really gonna let them talk about us like that?" Officer Clint Durbin muttered, pacing outside Chief Rourke's office. It was mid-morning at the Monroe Police Department. The hallways were tense, silent except for whispers and the occasional ring of a phone that no one answered. Officers kept their eyes down as they walked past the glass walls of the chief's corner office. Durbin was furious. "We're not all bad guys, Chief, but they're painting us like villains out there," he snapped, slamming his palm against the doorframe. Chief Rourke looked up slowly, his face lined with exhaustion. "You're not helping, Clint." "I'm not helping. The whole department's crawling like we're criminals now. People spit when they see the badge, man. They look at me like I shoved that general myself," Rourke rubbed his temples. That's because silence makes us complicit, he muttered. Then, louder, if you're waiting for me to defend that gas station mess, don't. Durbin's nostrils flared. You used to have our backs. I had the department's back when we earned it. We didn't earn it that day. Outside, the sound of passing cars and distant city life filtered through the blinds. But inside, everything was still. Rourke stood. We're not going to fix this by pretending we didn't fail. That man, that general, gave us a chance to clean house before someone else does it for us. We either step up or we get stepped over. Durbin stared at him, stunned, then stormed out. The shift had begun, even inside the badge. That evening at the Monroe Civic Auditorium, folding chairs filled fast. What began as a few local families trickled into something bigger. Students, veterans, mothers, city workers, church leaders. By 6 p.m., over 800 people packed the space. Some stood along the walls, others sat on the stairs. Outside, hundreds more gathered to listen through speakers. The lights dimmed slightly. A single spotlight hit the center stage. Marcus. Ellison stepped to the podium. He wore a simple gray suit. No medals. No stars. Just presence. This mic isn't for speeches, he began. It's for truth. He looked out over the crowd. A sea of faces reflecting anger, exhaustion, hope. If you've ever been silenced, dismissed, or degraded by the very system meant to protect you, come speak. This floor is yours. The first speaker was a teenage girl. She talked about her brother being handcuffed for skateboarding after sunset. The next was a grandmother who said she no longer called the police because they bring fear instead of help. Then came a teacher, a nurse, a black veteran in full uniform. Each voice chipped away at the illusion that what happened to Marcus was rare. It wasn't. It was just filmed. And as the stories poured in, Marcus stood off to the side, arms crossed, listening. Not interrupting, just witnessing. Agent Carter leaned in. This is bigger than reform now. Marcus nodded. It's reckoning. Back at City Hall, Mayor Hensley watched the live stream from her office, her assistant whispering updates from her phone. CNN just picked it up. So did MSNBC. Twitter's trending General Ellison #3 nationwide. The mayor leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled under her chin. She knew what came next. Either lead the change or be remembered for resisting it. She picked up her phone and dialed the governor's office. This is Mayor Hensley. We need to talk about statewide reform. Tonight. And outside the auditorium, where the crowd had overflowed into the park, someone quietly passed out small white cards. No logos, no politics, just 3 words in bold black font. We saw everything. This city don't belong to you no more, said the man at the mic, his voice rough from years of shouting into wind that never listened. He was in his 60s, maybe older. Wore an old leather cap and a brown corduroy jacket faded by sun and struggle. His hands gripped the microphone with the steadiness of someone who'd waited a long, long time to be heard. For decades, he said, eyes scanning the packed auditorium. We've been pulled over, passed over, and pushed down like we don't matter. But tonight you listened. He nodded toward Marcus. He made y'all look. But we've been here. This city was built with our hands, our taxes, our prayers, and we're done begging to be seen. The crowd didn't cheer. They stood, one by one, not loud, not wild, just silent. A rising wave of presence. Marcus sat in the front row, hands folded in his lap, his chest rising slow. Not pride, not satisfaction, grief. Because this wasn't a celebration, it was a long overdue release. He stood up slowly and approached the mic again. The man stepped aside, nodding. Marcus let the silence stretch before speaking. Change doesn't belong to one man. It belongs to the people who refuse to stop demanding it. A pause. This city doesn't need a hero. It needs honesty. The light softened. Some in the audience began to cry. Others held each other's hands, unsure why they were crying. Only that something deep was breaking open. Down the street, inside the precinct, Officer Mays sat in the locker room alone. He held his badge in his hands like it was foreign. Now. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Saw your name on the town hall list. That took guts. M.E. He stared at it, then typed back. I froze that day. I should have said something. 3 dots appeared. Then say it now. Mays looked at the row of lockers, at the patch on his sleeve, at the man in the mirror who hadn't looked back at him the same since the day at the gas station. He stood, picked up his keys, and left. An hour later, Officer Clint Durbin walked into Rourke's office without knocking. I just got word from county, Durbin said, voice clipped. They're starting an audit, and they're bringing feds, again. Rourke didn't look up from his papers. We knew this was coming. No, Durbin said, voice rising. We let it come. You and that mayor, bending to some out-of-town general and his circus of media clowns. Rourke stood slowly. His face had aged years in days. You ever wonder why they call it public service, Clint? Durbin didn't answer. Because we serve the people, not our egos, not our fear, and sure as hell not our past. So that's it? Durbin asked. We just roll over? Let them strip us down? No. Rourke walked around the desk, eyes locked on him. We rebuild, or we step aside. Durbin scoffed and left without another word. But the tremble in his hand told a different story. At the Ellison home, Marcus's phone rang again. This time he answered. Marcus, said the voice on the line. It's Congressman Reed. Just watch the full town hall. We need someone like you to help lead federal reform proposals. Marcus was quiet. For a moment, then replied, I'll do it, but only if it includes every name that never made it to a microphone. That's the plan, Reed said. We're starting with Monroe, but we won't stop there. Back at the auditorium, as the crowd began to thin, someone approached Marcus with a small envelope. Inside, a note written in shaky cursive. You didn't raise your voice. You raised the whole city. Thank you. Marcus folded the note gently. He didn't know who sent it, but he knew what it meant. This city didn't belong to silence anymore. It belonged to the people who finally, refused to be quiet. You're the reason I want to wear the uniform now, the boy said, his voice barely above a whisper. He couldn't have been more than 12. Small frame, baggy hoodie, scuffed sneakers. He stood in front of Marcus in the park where the city had set up a temporary community fair. Kids were laughing in the distance. Food trucks lined the street. But right here, in this quiet moment under an old oak tree, time felt still. Marcus knelt so he was eye level with him. What's your name, son? Jalen? The boy shifted nervously. My uncle used to tell me not to trust uniforms. Said they'd never protect boys like me. Marcus looked down for a beat, then back up, steady. Your uncle wasn't wrong to feel that way, but what we wear doesn't define who we protect. We do, Jalen nodded, then reached into his backpack and pulled out a worn drawing, a sketch of a black man in a military uniform, standing tall on a street corner while kids played around him. On his chest, 3 stars. This you? Jalen asked. Marcus took the paper gently. It could be. Nearby, Mayor Hensley stood beneath a small tent with reporters circling her. She held a folder of signed reform pledges, updated hiring practices, new accountability boards, mandatory community patrol rotations. This is just the beginning, she said, facing the cameras. And we're not just doing this in Monroe. We've invited leaders from 12 neighboring cities to adopt these same reforms. She looked over her shoulder. Marcus was still with the boy. He didn't just change the system, she said softly. He changed the standard. Inside the precinct, Officer Mays stood at the front of the briefing room. His badge gleamed in the morning light. His voice was steady as he addressed the room of younger recruits. If you're here for power, he said, you're in the wrong place. But if you're here for people, for the mothers, the fathers, the kids like Jalen, then this badge might mean something again. In the back, Captain Lowell stood silently, arms crossed. For the first time in years, the department felt like it was breathing again. Not because of silence, because of truth. That night, Marcus walked the quiet streets of Monroe by himself. No cameras, no microphones, just the sound of wind through trees and distant laughter from the fairgrounds. He passed the same gas station where it all began. Same cracked pavement, same flickering light over Pump 3. He stopped and stood there for a moment, closed his eyes. He could still feel the heat on his skin, the shove in his chest, the cold command in Grayson's voice. Kneel. But he never did, and he never would. Instead, he looked down at the pavement, then raised his head and whispered, "Not here. Not now. Not ever again." Across town, in a small newsroom office, a junior reporter edited the final cut of a video titled, "The Day a General Refused to Kneel." And a city finally stood up. As she played the closing shot, Marcus speaking to the boy in the park, she felt tears roll down her cheeks. It wasn't just a story. It was a shift, a declaration. That silence was no longer welcome here. You changed everything without saying a word, the woman said softly, standing outside Marcus's hotel as the sun broke over Monroe's rooftops. She was older, dressed in a floral church dress, gray scarf wrapped gently around her braids. She looked like someone who had seen lifetimes of injustice and had learned how to survive with grace. "I didn't need to yell," Marcus replied. "I just needed to stay standing." She smiled. "And we saw you. All of us did." Marcus nodded and opened the door for her as she stepped into the early morning prayer gathering that had replaced the final press conference. No cameras, no stage, just community and stillness. Inside the auditorium, folding chairs had been rearranged into circles. No podiums, no speeches. People sat together, police, residents, teenagers, elders, and just talked. Stories, regrets, hopes. It wasn't a ceremony. It was healing. That afternoon, Agent Carter joined Marcus at the edge of town. "They're calling this a model," Carter said, watching the crews install a new community board outside City Hall. "Other cities are already asking how they can copy what happened here." "Don't copy me," Marcus said. "Copy the people, the voices, the silence that finally broke." Carter looked at him with quiet admiration. "You going back to D.C.? "Not yet," Marcus replied, glancing back toward the school where Jalen and others were painting a mural of heroes. "There's more to finish here." Carter smiled. "Good. Because the country's watching." At sunset, the final press statement was posted outside the precinct, effective immediately. Officer Grayson, terminated Chief Rourke. Retiring, replaced by a new civilian-chosen chief department under permanent independent oversight. First ever Civilian Justice Board, approved unanimously de-escalation and bias training, certified by DoD advisors, community-led town forums to be held quarterly. The bottom. This is not a headline, this is a beginning. Signed by Mayor Hensley, Marcus Ellison, and the citizens of Monroe. That night, Marcus returned to his father's gravestone. Same spot he hadn't visited in years. Same worn engraving, Seol. David Ellison, served with honor, died standing. Marcus placed a folded flag on the stone. "I didn't raise my voice, Dad. I raised the roof off the silence." He stood there for a while. No medals, no camera, just a man who'd lived through humiliation and turned it into history. Back in town, Jalen sat at the edge of his bed, pinning a small patch to his backpack. 3 silver stars, and beneath it, "Ellison taught me to stand." Smiled to himself, then turned off the light, and the city, for the first time in years, slept under a quiet sky not heavy with fear, but lit by the quiet strength of justice finally waking up.